Greetings and welcome to an LGR MIDI music thing. This time around we've got a lovely piece of retro kit I just got in from Osaka, Japan, the Roland Sound Canvas SC55ST, that sold for around $400 upon its initial introduction in 1993. Also sold under Roland's Edirol brand, the SC55ST was a cost-reduced alternative to its luxurious older sibling, the SC55. Considering that beautiful beast sold for twice the price at the time, this ST edition was an alluring prospect, particularly so to PC gamers seeking a somewhat lower-cost MIDI music solution, since the 55ST offers the exact same sounds as the full-fat Sound Canvas without those front panel controls most gamers didn't need anyway. So yeah, $400, $800, whatever, either way, now your music could sound like this in 1993. That classic Sound Canvas soundscape, all in a package half the price of the functionally identical SC55 Mark II. The major concession being that, other than the missing front panel, the SC55ST outputs 16-bit audio instead of the 55's 18-bit. Something the everyday user probably wouldn't notice considering the abilities of the average desktop computer speakers at the time. Reference quality studio monitors, these ain't. The other notable differences come around back, with only a single MIDI input and RCA line-level output. No MIDI out, through, or auxiliary input like the 55. Again, though being geared more towards MIDI playback than music production, the typical SC55ST user wasn't going to be missing those anyway. Besides, you still got the same serial I/O connection for connecting it directly to a computer. This way you could connect it to your machine without pesky MIDI cables or a processing unit like the MPU 401. All you needed was the Roland serial interface cable, compatible software for Windows DOS or Mac OS, and you were good to go. Certain games may need a bit more, but yeah, that was the idea anyway. And in this particular bundle from Japan, an assortment of software was provided for the NEC PC98 series of computers, along with a pair of headphones and glorious amounts of documentation. Unfortunately, mine was just the sound module and cables in a box. Cool by me, since I got a good deal on it, just over 4,000 yen for everything. Though you may wonder why I wanted this to begin with, since I already own an SC55 Mark II and an SC88, both of which I've covered on LGR, and both of which are far more capable. Well, beyond the fact that my impulse control is dangerously close to zero when it comes to retro Roland hardware from Japan, the biggest reason is because I think it looks fantastic in its clean off-white plastic shell. Yeah, it also came in dark gray like many other Sound Canvases, but when I saw the bright white variant, I couldn't say no. It's similar to Roland's computer music series like the CM32 and the CM300, which also came in a similar beige housing and no front control panels, being cut-down versions of the MT32 and SC55. Unlike those, however, the 55ST is a proper single-unit half-rack device, meaning that its height is the same as a 1U rack mount module, but its width is about half that, at nearly 22 centimeters or 8.5 inches. Which is awesome. I love collecting half-rack MIDI modules since they're all so different but the same basic size. Thing is though, I almost never need to touch the additional controls and connections they provide. At least on a DOS PC, where my main motivation is playing MIDI soundtracks to classic computer games like Duke 3D. So yeah, other than the volume, I rarely ever end up adjusting the settings on the SC55 or 88 when it comes to games. As a result, I've actually ended up moving these beefier Sound Canvas units into my synth setup, and that's a whole nother can of musical worms completely unrelated to my PC MIDI playback stuff, so this left an opening on my desk for something more suited to beige-covered 90s computer gaming. And the SC55ST fit the bill perfectly. Pretty much just plug and play and look good doing it, not much more to it than that. Power on the left, volume knob on the right, and a 3.5mm stereo headphone jack beside that. Excellent. That's sounding good. Just like the SC55 Mark II, the 55ST here is a digital ROM-based sampler or Rompler, providing 28-note polyphony, 16-voice multi-timbral playback with 354 built-in sounds, 9 preset drum kits, 1 sound effects kit, and it's general MIDI and Roland GS compatible. And despite its lack of controls, it also supports the same MT32 compatibility as its larger, more expensive relatives. But since there are no front panel controls, the 55ST relies on software to switch things around. The program GS Play is one option, MIDI Commander is another, but either way you can send over MIDI and sysx commands and get a rough approximation of the MT32's LA synthesis. As with the SC55 Mark II, this is not something I often take advantage of due to its inconsistency. I'm fine hooking up a real MT32 as needed. It really is all about those crispy sound canvas instruments, so grab a drink, sit back for a minute, and enjoy. Isn't this thing great? Sure, it lacks a mesmerizing glowing orange screen, but there's something so cool about such an awesome sound coming from such a plain-looking little box. And the way it blends in seamlessly with the other retro PC hardware on this desk is just mwah. Fits in perfectly with those Roland MA12C speakers, as you'd expect, seeing as they were sold at the same time as the 55ST. It just makes me happy when things match. Still, it goes without saying that if you can acquire the more fully featured sound canvas units and enjoy the prospect of buttons, knobs, and LCD screens, then I'd say go for it. They're a lot of fun to use, and the additional controls and I/O provided make for a more complete MIDI experience, especially if you want to make music instead of only listen to it. And of course, there are more modern routes to take, like Roland's VST plugin, the Sound Canvas VA, or big ol' brutes like the SC8850 that features built-in USB and doubles as a deadly weapon. However, if you're like me and have come to appreciate the simplicity and clean lines offered by a half-rack device like the 55ST, then it's a satisfying thing to have on hand. It can also be notably cheaper than the higher-end Sound Canvas units, so if you're looking to get in on that sweet Roland MIDI goodness for a bit less cash, it's worth putting the 55ST on your radar. Either way though, I'm just happy with it as a dandy desktop doohickey, so enough of this ramble, I'm off to play some DOS games. And if you enjoyed this LGR thing, then great. I've got plenty more where this came from, including a number of existing Roland reviews, with more stuff going up each week here on this channel. And as always, thank you for watching.